In at number 10, Deadpool. With the merger between Disney and Fox, there have been tons of rumors surrounding the members of the X-Men, the Fantastic Four, and even the Merc with a Mouth coming over to the new Avengers. The most likely is Deadpool. He has a history with the Avengers, and the only thing that Disney executives have to work out is translating the R-rated star into the more family-friendly audience of the MCU. According to online rumors, Deadpool is set to appear in the end credits scene of Black Widow, spoiler alert, and therefore will be joining the new team of Avengers very soon. We are still waiting on Kevin Feige to confirm, but he did note that the movie is happening with a whole new lineup of Avengers, which is pretty exciting. And it's actually even more exciting news that we'll continue to speculate on throughout the rest of this list. In at number 9, Hulkling. Word on the street is that Marvel is casting for Teddy Altman aka Hulkling for an upcoming project that we can only hope is the new Avengers team. Based on a report from Geeks Worldwide, this young Avenger should be joining the cast of WandaVision at some point. The other reason why there is good speculation for Hulkling to be joining the new Avengers in regards to the MCU is the upcoming release of the new Avengers Empire comic. In the comic, Hulkling will lead as the star coming to end the beef between his people, the Kree, and the Skrulls. The fact that this comic book release date is lining up so perfectly with an intro to the MCU means we are hopeful that Teddy will finally get his shot. In at number 8, Songbird. Her real name is Melissa Gold. She was a troubled runaway from an alcoholic father and a mother that was locked in prison. Due to her needing to survive on the streets, Melissa developed a hard edge to her personality that she would later use to her advantage when becoming a professional wrestler, the Screaming Mimi. Her transition to the new Avengers was a bit of a bumpy road to say the least. Under the supervision of John Garrett, Songbird infiltrated S.H.I.E.L.D. as a double agent. When her cover was finally blown though, she admitted her betrayal and thus became a triple agent after siding with Bobby DaCosta. Still a good member to the new Avengers.
Number 7, Wonder Man. One of the Avengers' more troubled team members, the ionic energy-powered superhero Simon Williams, has a long history with the Avengers that goes all the way back to his debut. Now, Simon inherited his father's company, Williams Innovations, and ended up running it straight into the ground with the help of competition from Stark Industries. He was then later arrested for embezzling funds from the company, giving him a bitter hatred for Iron Man that was then leveraged by the supervillain Baron Zemo as a plot against the Avengers. After being given powers by Zemo, however, Simon betrays him and chooses to fight alongside the team he once fought against. The exact nature of his powers isn't always clear, but regardless, this energy gives his body a massive power up beyond the capabilities of normal humans. One of the powers being, of course, super strength. Wonder Man's strength is said to be on par with Thor and even possibly Sentry, as one time he literally knocked out Thor with just one punch, and this is a result of the experiments by Zemo. Wonder Man is also imbued with ionic energy, giving him super stamina, speed, agility, and then flight and reflexes, as well as making him pretty much indestructible. Wonder Man can also absorb various forms of energy including antimatter, is able to project powerful energy blasts at will, and can even exist as pure energy if he wants to. Perhaps the biggest quirk of his abilities, however, is that he doesn't actually require any food, water, or even oxygen to survive, all thanks to his vast reserves of energy. Check him out for yourself in his first appearance in 1964's Avengers. Number 9. Number 6. Crystal. The first Inhuman to appear on this list today, Crystal is a part of the royal family of Attilan and was subjected to the Terrigen Mist when she was very young, which gave her some pretty cool mental powers. Put simply, she's just basically the Avatar. She has control over the 4 elements, fire, water, earth, and air, which is done through psionic interactions with the substance on an atomic level. However, these 4 elements aren't where her control ends, because she also is capable of electrokinesis, magnetokinesis, thermokinesis, and cryokinesis. During her tenure with the Avengers taking place during the Operation Galactic Storm, she developed an attraction with teammate Dane Whitman, the Black Knight. This relationship was a bit complicated as Pietro was trying to fix their marriage, and the available and aggressive Cersei pursuing Dane at the time as well. Crystal recommitted to Pietro when he returned to the Avengers, and Dane and Cersei were soon transported to another universe, ending their thoughts of an affair completely. Crystal was among the Avengers who seemingly sacrificed themselves to end the menace called Onslaught. Actually transported to a different reality created by Franklin Richards, Crystal was restored when the heroes returned. When the heroes who were believed to be dead returned to Earth, Crystal and Quicksilver were quickly reunited, and both helped the Avengers reassemble. Crystal, however, returned to Attilan where she remained beside the royal family, raising Luna. Check out her story for yourself, starting with 1965's Fantastic Four, number 45. Number 5. Miss America. Raised in a dimension outside of time and space known as the Utopian Parallel, America Chavez is one of Marvel's newer teen heroes, and she is a powerhouse to say the least. She's been a member of multiple super teams, including the Young Avengers, A-Force, to the West Coast Avengers and the Ultimates, and belongs to the younger generation of heroes who will potentially be the stars of Marvel stories in the future. Chavez gained her powers as a young girl from a magical entity that resided where she lived, and these powers are superhuman strength and speed, star portal creation which allows her to travel the multiverse, and of course, hypercosmic awareness alongside a number of other powers and abilities. When her dimension was threatened by black holes, her mothers sacrificed themselves to save it, and Chavez ran away from home to travel across dimensions. This began her journey both literally and emotionally from girl to superhero. Since her introduction, America has taken part in many huge plot points, one of the biggest being her role in Civil War II. Now I won't spoil too much of it for you because it absolutely deserves a read, but let's just say she was smart enough to outsmart Captain Marvel and Spectrum. Appearing for the first time in 2011's Avengers #1, why not check her out for yourself? Number 4. Captain Universe. Tamara DeVoe, aka Captain Universe, was once a woman who suffered from some pretty bad amnesia after a car crash. Although that's not the greatest outcome, she was also imbued with the power of the Enigma Force in the aftermath, so I guess that's somewhat of a bright side. Now what's the Enigma Force? Well, it is a mystical energy that passes through the microverse in order to protect and preserve the microverse. The wielders of this force are imbued with the Unipower, a facet of the Enigma Force that gives the wielder some pretty sweet powers. In Tamara's case, she was given the ability to manipulate matter and energy, and can also use Univision, which allows her to sense things on a subatomic level or at great distances, or she can use it to literally force someone to tell the truth. Her first mission with the Avengers was actually on Mars to stop the powerful beings Ex Nihilo, Abyss, and Aleph from terraforming the Earth in their image. When Tamara approached them, both Nihilo and Abyss recognized her as their literal goddess and the physical manifestation of the universe itself, so they immediately submitted and just agreed to her terms. However, Aleph did not and just straight up attacked her. Captain Universe easily burned the robot to ashes with a single touch, and the Avengers returned to Earth after a very easy job well done. That wasn't her only mission with the team though, but I will let you check that one out for yourself. Give her story a read starting with 2013's Avengers Volume 5, Number 1. Number 3. Ares. Inspired by a Greek god of the same name, Ares was initially introduced as an antagonist to Thor. However, in 2006, Ares became more of an anti-hero, which inevitably led to him joining forces with the Avengers. Thanks to his Olympian physiology, Ares possesses superhuman strength, speed, stamina, durability, and agility, and is a true immortal, meaning that he can't die by any conventional means. Not only that, Ares has the ability to manipulate war, strife, combat, and all forms of conflict, including mental, physical, spiritual, and conceptual ones, regardless of the area and numbers involved, meaning he can control how they progress. Immediately following the superhero civil war over its legislation, Iron Man and Ms. Marvel traveled to Ares' construction site to recruit him for their new Avengers team. Agreeing that the heroes had ruined his civilian cover, Ares eventually agreed to join the team after Iron Man threatened to deport him to Olympus if he didn't register with the US government and promised a salary similar to that of his construction job. He played a pivotal role in Ultron's defeat and was also largely responsible for bringing down Norman Osborn's Dark Avengers. That victory was sadly bittersweet though, because it led to his death as he was just straight up ripped completely in half. Don't worry though, like I said, he is a god, so he was resurrected not too long after. Check out his entire story for yourself, starting with his first appearance all the way back in the Golden Age in 1942's Comedy Comics Number 10. Number 2. Gilgamesh. Often referred to as the Forgotten One, Gilgamesh's heroic exploits have become so legendary over the millennia that he's often referred to as heroes of myth like Hercules and of course Gilgamesh, which kind of explains his name and why he goes by Gilgamesh. He is one of, if not the strongest member of the hidden group of superpowered beings known as the Eternals, an ancient race of genetically altered humans created by the Celestials. Alongside his teammates, he helps shield humanity from the vicious deviants, though Gilgamesh seems to have a very soft spot for protecting the people of Earth. He joined the Avengers in a time where their membership was at an all-time low, and although his time with them was pretty short, he was an absolutely vital member of the team. While all Eternals were born with an inherent set of superhuman abilities including super strength, Gilgamesh's strength far exceeds that of any of his counterparts, making him one of the most physically powerful characters in all of Marvel, with strength comparable to that of Hercules, Thor, and any other godlike being. As a result of countless millennia of training, Gilgamesh is also an extremely skilled hand-to-hand combatant, which coupled with his imperviousness to damage makes him one of Marvel's most dangerous characters. As is the case with most Eternals, Gilgamesh can also emit deadly beams of light, heat, and physical force from his hands and eyes, and can manipulate matter to a limited degree. Give his story a read for yourself, starting with 1977's Eternals, Number 13. Number 1. Blue Marble. Adam Brashear, aka Blue Marble, was known as a child prodigy from an early age and has PhDs in electrical engineering and theoretical physics. After serving his time in the Korean War, Adam joined and led a project attempting to harness antimatter by creating a negative reactor, but unfortunately there was an unexpected explosion and both he and his partner Connor Sims were exposed to the radiation. Now Sims wasn't too lucky and his whole body just disassembled, but Adam was able to become a stable antimatter reactor and develop some pretty sweet powers. As Blue Marvel, he possesses super strength that rivals both the Hulk and Thor, can manipulate antimatter into energy blast, can fly, is pretty much invulnerable, and is also pretty much immortal, as he ages much slower than the normal human, making him a serious force to be reckoned with. As a part of the Mighty Avengers, both the 1970s and the one led by Luke Cage and the Ultimates, we have seen Blue Marvel go up against the likes of the Deathwalkers, King Hyperion, and one time he even flew straight through Shumagorath's head because why not, right? Not only that, he has been seen able to withstand the blast of a hydrogen bomb and can even go toe to toe with Captain Marvel and come out relatively unscathed. So yeah, he deserves the top spot today. Check him out for yourself, starting with 2009's Adam, Legend of the Blue Marvel, number 1.
Number 10. Dark Avengers. The Dark Avengers were first introduced in their own comic book series in Dark Avengers issue number 1. Not everyone is a fan of them, because while they're kind of Avengers, they're also kind of go against a lot of the things that the original team stood for. The Dark Avengers are led by Norman Osborn, who gets to make his own organization, Hammer, to safeguard the world's safety following the crumbling of S.H.I.E.L.D. and after his victory against the Skrull Queen, whose death was brought about by Osborn and was also televised, making him a worldwide hero in the eyes of many, despite the fact that, yeah, he was still definitely a villain. Still, although this team was comprised of villains, they did aim to do good things, just in their own way. In truth, they became more a team of anti-heroes than anything, with just a dash of villainous escapades organized by their leader, Osborn, who at this point went by Iron Patriot. Sort of like the Iron Man of this Dark Avengers crew. Number 9. Avengers Academy. Avengers Academy was a series that replaced the Avengers The Initiative series. As that series ended, this one began. The Avengers Academy team was a group of superpowered youths who were selected to be trained as new Avengers. Although originally the teens thought that they had been selected due to the promise that they showed, it was later revealed that they had been selected because of the great risk that they would ultimately become villains. In fact, 6 of the teens were actually working for Norman Osborn during the Dark Avengers Hammer Dark Reign days, and likely could have ended up being trained by him to become Dark Avengers, should that whole situation have continued to play out. However, when the Avengers found out about them, they instead decided to create the Avengers Academy in an attempt to repurpose and redeem those youths, so basically took them in themselves. Hank Pym acted as the headmaster of this academy, while Tigra, Justice, Quicksilver, and Speedball took on roles as teachers. Number 8. Secret Avengers. This team operated for 3 years in the comics. It was led by Commander Steve Rogers and Sharon Carter. After the dissolution of Hammer and the Dark Avengers, Steve was now left to decide what should come after. Instead of reforming S.H.I.E.L.D. or the Avengers, he decided to secure global safety through the use of various smaller Avengers teams. Secret Avengers was one of those teams that he himself led and was a black ops unit used for covertly dealing with the problems that Osborn, Hammer, and the Dark Avengers had left behind and created during their reign. Members included Black Widow, Ant-Man, Beast, Moon Knight, War Machine, Nova, and a Valkyrie named Brunhilde. They were eventually disbanded by Hawkeye following their fight against the Descendants. But man, was it a fun and weird run. Seriously, if you haven't checked out Secret Avengers, you should maybe do it. It's pretty strange. I kinda love it.
In at number 7, Squirrel Girl. Her real name is Doreen Green, and whether you like it or not, she is a valued member of the New Avengers. Moving away from the MCU for a moment, Squirrel Girl undoubtedly has a big fan base and has proved her worth many times. She's a former member of the Great Lakes Avengers, and when Luke Cage and Jessica Jones needed a babysitter, they hired her. I mean, bit of a slap in the face considering all that she has done in the comic books, but hey, she's still considered to be a new Avenger team member. In at number 6, Enigma. Also known as Pod and now Pod 2, Jokinen was an ethnically Finnish Norwegian girl. Due to her proximity of the Pod system armor crash landing, she was bonded to the suit and remained in a cocoon that was later discovered by the Advanced Idea Mechanics, or AIM for short. At first she quickly defeated the Avengers, but soon she was captured by them before Bobby DaCosta took over AIM. Over time and after some successful missions, Pod would become Sunspot's bodyguard and member of the New Avengers. Dr. Tony Ho, whom Amanda mentioned on the first part, became increasingly fascinated with Pod and even started to fall in love with the person inside of that armor. How sweet. In at number 5, Power Man. His real name is Victor Alvarez, and he was born and raised in the brutal world of Hell's Kitchen, New York City. As a child, Victor's father was a criminal and therefore sent to Seagate Prison as a result. So he didn't exactly have great role models per se, other than his mother that raised him. After the Mighty Avengers were shut down, Power Man along with White Tiger followed each other to join the newly rebranded AIM team, which would in part become the New Avengers. Victor would fight side by side with this team for many adventures, but ultimately he felt that he was neglecting his home neighborhood for far too long. So we may not see much of Victor Alvarez in terms of MCU, but he definitely had a great stint with the New Avengers. And maybe he'll come back, who knows? Just speculation. In at number 4, Wiccan. Billy Kaplan had an interaction with the Avengers at a very early age. While he was dealing with bullies at his school, Billy turned to the Avengers mansion in seek of help. He briefly met his hero, the Scarlet Witch, who told him that he could take care of himself, and boy oh boy did he take care of himself. I mean, Billy chose to stand up to his bully right when his electrokinetic powers started to emerge. With powers like this, he was already set to follow in the footsteps of Doctor Strange, becoming the next Sorcerer Supreme. In the comic books at least, Kaplan and Strange meet when Doctor Strange enters a dimension wherein all past, present, and future sorcerers have gathered. Aside from that, Kaplan was a full-time superhero as part of Roberto's team of New Avengers. In at number 3, Kate Bishop. Much like how Billy Kaplan was following the footsteps of Doctor Strange, Kate Bishop was the third character in the Marvel comic books to take on the Hawkeye mantle following Clint Barton. Allegedly, she will also be a featured character in the upcoming Disney Plus series Hawkeye, which makes perfect sense if you're priming her character to join the New Avengers. Throughout these series, it's believed that Barton will train Kate Bishop following the events of Endgame. Seeing as though he's become Ronin, this leaves the Hawkeye position wide open. Some have also speculated that Lila Barton will essentially be the new Kate Bishop, but at the end of the day, that's up to Marvel's writing team. In at number 2, Iron Lad. With the introduction of Harley Keener in Iron Man 3 and then a brief appearance at the funeral in Endgame, it's clear that they were warming audiences up for Iron Lad. Especially considering the brave sacrifice that Tony Stark made, the opening for the next Iron Man is available and the only possible prospect to fill in is Harley. Now clearly the comic books are much different than the storyline that the MCU is putting forth, but they rarely do stuff like this for no good reason. So with that in mind and all of the advanced tech that we saw Harley working on as a kid, it's clear to see that Iron Lad will be one of the newest Avengers. Last but not least, on our number 1 spot, Shang-Chi. From the moment Shang was born, he would be raised to become a deadly assassin by his father. Even in his sleep, he would be subjected to alchemy and a virtual reality feed that taught techniques while he slept. Following the events of Avengers vs. X-Men, Captain America and Iron Man were looking at expanding their team to make it bigger and stronger than ever before. This saw the addition of Shang-Chi, who was one of the first picks for this new Avengers initiative. In terms of the MCU, he is already set to star in his own solo film called Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings.
Number 10, Mantis. A new addition to the Guardians team, Mantis went from being Ego's roommate in Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 to becoming an Avenger, even holding Thanos down while the rest of the team tried to take the gauntlet off. Now in the comics, Mantis had to endure quite a bit before becoming an Avenger. She made her first appearance in Avengers issue 112, The Lion God Lives. Mantis was trained as a child by alien priests, section of the Kree, who thought that she was destined to be the celestial Madonna. She was killing it in martial arts, hence the nickname Mantis. Now her real name is Brant, but Mantis sounds much more fun. No offense to all the Brants out there. Those priests enhanced her mind, giving her telepathic abilities, and on her 18th birthday she was given the gift of a lifetime, when her mind was wiped and she was instead given false memories of her childhood as an orphan in Vietnam, to experience a normal life. Because that's part of the celestial Madonna route. Nothing builds that Madonna power more than some time in Vietnam. Right? And in doing so, Mantis learned to hold it down on her own quite easily. Number 9, Dr. Druid. Anthony Ludgate entered Marvel Comics in Weird Wonder Tales issue 19. He's a bit of a smarty pants, some would say. I mean, he got a degree in psychology from Harvard and then became a psychiatrist. But that wasn't enough for Anthony. He wanted to study the ancient powers of his ancestral druids. So he was studying the occult on his off time. He finally met the ancient one who passed down a lot of tricks, and Anthony left and became Dr. Druid, assisting monster hunters, including Makari when they went against deviants. So this guy goes back quite far. He's also a little more dramatic than strange, some would say. In Avengers issue 294, he manipulated Captain America's mind so that he would be the replacement chairman. And this was right after Captain Marvel was injured. What a snake. And before we continue on with this list of strongest Avengers you wouldn't expect, part 2, if you want to go ahead and give us a thumbs up, that would be so helpful for our channel. It really helps us out a lot, especially while we're working from home. And if you haven't as well, hit that subscribe button maybe if you feel like it. I don't know, if you feel like it. Let's get back into this list. Number 8, Firestar. Angelica Jones made her comic book debut in Uncanny X-Men 193. She was born with, well, as you would guess by her name, the ability to generate great heat. Cerebro found her, but the Hellfire Club got to her moments before. She was learning a lot under the White Queen's guidance, honestly, unaware of the cruel nature of the club, of course. See, Frost actually gave her the nickname Firestar. So then Firestar joined as a reserve member in Avengers Volume 3, Issue 4. Yeah, so Hawkeye demanded that one of the 2 new members that they're recruiting has to be Firestar. He announced it to the world prematurely. He was that confident. The other members are like, whoa, let's hold on a second here, because that spot that we had open was actually for you, Hawkeye. But they settled on reserve member. That's fine, that's good enough. Now cut to issue 7, the former X-Men member became a full Avengers member. Firestar was also amongst the lucky 198 mutants to have kept their abilities after the Scarlet Witch decimated the mutant population.
Number 7, Mighty Avengers. Granted, there is more than one Mighty Avengers team, but for the purpose of this list, we're talking about Luke Cage's Mighty Avengers. This team of Avengers formed to look after the Earth after the main Avengers team was forced to roll out when the Builders threatened the entire universe. Yeah, that was a thing, remember that? During the Avengers' absence, Thanos returned to Earth and the Mighty Avengers stepped in to protect their people and their planet. The team was led by Luke Cage and included such heroes as Spectrum, White Tiger, and Blue Marvel, as well as Superior Spider-Man, who at one point attempted to overtake leadership of the team, fighting Luke Cage for it. Number 6, AIM. I know what you're thinking, AIM? Wait, but what? AIM was originally the villainous organization of genius-level scientists, also known as Advanced Idea Mechanics, who aimed, get it, aimed, to overthrow the government and rule the world using technological advancements. So what are you talking about, Amanda? How can they be an Avengers team? Well, this organization eventually was taken over by mutant and hero Sunspot, Roberto da Costa. Sunspot renamed the organization Avengers Idea Mechanics and set out to reclaim and reform it. He used the organization for good, filling it with more noble, brilliant minds who developed tech to help with Sunspot's new Avengers rescue missions. Roberto basically merged his new Avengers team with AIM to create this new technologically advanced Avengers team. Previously, that new Avengers team was actually known as the Multiversal Avengers, and originally they were all about discovering the reason behind the gradual disintegration of the multiverse. Number 5, All New All Different Avengers. This was both its own new team of Avengers in a series, as well as being known as the name for kind of an entire Marvelverse soft relaunch, including a variety of spin-offs that took place in 2015, known as the All New All Different verse. This relaunch included a variety of series, including one of my faves, All New Wolverine. But for the purpose of this list, we'll be talking about the All New All Different Avengers founding team and the individual comic series itself that was about them. Following Secret Wars, this All New All Different Avengers team was formed. Originally it was comprised of Iron Man, Sam Wilson, who was Captain America at the time, Miss Marvel aka Kamala Khan, Miles Morales as Spider-Man, young Sam Alexander as Nova, Vision, and Jane Foster's Thor. Iron Man would act as their leader, but this team wouldn't even officially refer to themselves as Avengers until the very end of issue number 3 of their series. This was a refresh on the Avenger team, one that had no tower, no funding, and wasn't officially even recognized yet. Over time they would become more established, but the All New All Different team would only exist as it was for 15 issues, up until the events of Civil War II. Number 4, A-Force. The first all-female team of Avengers. It took us over 50 years, but eventually we got there. This team had 2 self-titled comic series, though sadly both were very short. The team was originally led by She-Hulk, and its members would include Captain Marvel, Medusa, Singularity, Dazzler, and Nico Minoru. A-Force originally took their name from the name for the defenders of the matriarchal nation of Arcadia on Battleworld, where She-Hulk reigned as a baroness. The team was created during the Secret Wars event involving Emperor Doom's Battleworld, and would continue to exist up until the events of Civil War II, when She-Hulk was put into a coma. It's kinda how that whole thing starts. Well, it's part of the start anyways. Number 3, US Avengers. The US Avengers is a strange and eclectic team, but also a fun and patriotic one. They worked alongside S.H.I.E.L.D., but were also considered independent of the organization. This team actually coincided with another Avenger-related one that I mentioned earlier, Avengers Idea Mechanics, the new AIM. Sunspot, who was operating under the popular alias of Citizen 5, led and created this team. It was comprised of a quirky yet popular group of heroes, including Robert Maverick's Red Hulk, Cannon Cannonball, Tony Ho's Iron Patriot, Squirrel Girl, Pod, and the time-displaced daughter of Luke Cage and Jessica Jones from an alternate future known as Danielle Cage, aka her alternate universe's Captain America. I love Danielle Cage, she's pretty cool. Number 2. Occupy Avengers. I almost said Octopus Avengers, which is not a thing. But maybe it should be a thing, I don't know, they could be a team, they're all octopuses. This series and Avengers spin-off was a small one. It consisted mainly of Hawkeye and followed his adventures on a path for redemption following the events of Civil War II. Let's not forget that it was Hawkeye's arrow that was deemed responsible for the death of Bruce Banner, although Banner had asked that Hawkeye mercy kill him should it be necessary. Although he was acquitted of all murder charges, Hawkeye still felt guilty and sought to make things right. His way of doing this? A more grassroots approach to heroism involving basically community outreach. Clint focused on more real-world problems that threatened people, like fixing up Santa Rosa, New Mexico's water supply. During the run of Occupy Avengers, Hawkeye would be joined by other heroes such as Red Wolf and Nightshade, who would join him on his quest. Number 1. Savage Avengers. This ruthless team of Avengers is basically one of the newest anti-hero Avenger teams to form, and is more anti-hero than our number 10 spot, the Dark Avengers, because all the members are still definitely the good guys, but are also known for being violent killers as well. This team was formed out of a team-up involving Wolverine and Conan the Barbarian. It consists of Elektra, Dr. Voodoo, formerly known as Brother Voodoo, Elektra, Punisher, and Venom. The team was assembled to combat the combined threat of spellcasters and spell traders from Conan's world and Marvel's main continuity evil secret ninja organization known as The Hand.
Kicking off the list at number 10, Wasp. Sometimes size matters. I mean, the Incredible Hulk can eat a car and then squish another car and toss it across San Francisco. That's awesome. But sometimes size doesn't necessarily matter. Janet Van Dyne may be small, but just like Ant-Man, she packs a mean punch. She made her first debut back in Tales to Astonish issue 44, and in the early 60s, she became a founding member of the Avengers, after her soon-to-be husband, Hank Pym, genetically altered her and gave her the ability to shrink down using Pym particles. She was also given biosynthetic wings implanted in her back to help her fly around while she fires bioelectric energy stings at bad guys. Donning the nickname the Wasp, she became Ant-Man's partner, and fans are excited that the release date being announced last week, we now get Ant-Man's third movie, Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania, and it hits theaters February 2022. So in the MCU, Janet is finally an Avenger post-Endgame, and in Avengers issue 1, well, she was already on the roster. Number 9, Black Knight. Dane Whitman made his comic book debut in Avengers issue 48. He inherited his uncle Garrett's castle and had no idea that his uncle was the villain, the Black Knight. He found the Ebony Blade and passed its test, becoming the new Black Knight. He then decided to join the Masters of Evil like his uncle did, but he was going in undercover. He was on the good side, so he wanted to help the Avengers, but they still needed more. They didn't trust him quite enough yet. In Avengers issue 71, funny enough, titled Endgame, Dane joins the Avengers. Well, kind of. Like I said, they didn't trust him so much until he helped fight Kang the Conqueror, and then they were like, okay, he's cool, come on aboard. He's an excellent swordsmith, so much so that he's beaten the swordsmith in combat. And that sword that he uses as well grants him immunity to magical powers. Plus the dude rides a winged horse, an underrated Avenger for sure. And before we continue on with this list, if you want to go ahead and give this video a thumbs up down below, that would be super helpful. It helps us a lot, especially while we're working from home. You guys are the best, thank you so much. Now let's bounce right back into this list. Number 8, Avenger X. Cressida made her debut in Avengers Volume 7, Issue 2. When the Avengers got help from the X-Men to track down the Stranger, Professor X helped by using Cerebro to direct them to northern Thailand, where they rescued a local woman named Cressida from the Cosmic Being. Now, she had this ability that could amplify the Avengers. They all got super jacked up, and even Cap said that he felt stronger. He felt like he could take on a full army. He's jumping higher, throwing 10 times harder. It's wild. When Scarlet Witch asked how she did that, she says she doesn't really know, but she feels sorry doing it. But the downside of her powers were kept hush-hush from Wanda. See, in order to empower them, she had to drain the life of everybody else in the village. And in the next issue, she was deemed an Avenger. She was given the tour, the whole thing. Welcome aboard. But meanwhile, while this is going on, at Sunshine Nursing Home, the same thing was happening to those who got the life drained from the village. Powerful team member, but maybe a little bit too dark. Number 7, Whizzer. This dude was only an Avenger for 4 years in the comics, but he's funky enough to mention. I feel like we don't talk about Whizzer enough. Robert Frank Sr. made his first appearance in USA Comics 1, and after a run-in with a cobra, he was bitten and his father had to use mongoose blood to try and save him the old-fashioned way. where he sucks the poison out. Some wives' tale, and it surely worked, but his father had a heart attack during this do-it-yourself transfusion and bit the bullet. Robert, on the other hand, was blessed with super speed after this. And then he became the Wizard. Great name, great name. He joined the Avengers in issue 173 back in 1978, but he met his fate and vision in the Scarlet Witch issue 2 in 1982. Number 6, Demolition Man. Dennis Murphy, born in Detroit, Michigan. He looked up to superheroes quite a bit, as do most of us. He was actually great at football, but he wasn't great enough to be recruited professionally. Sad times. But then that's when the power broker comes in to strike up a bargain. Super strength ought to help you with those home games, right, Dennis? Let's do it. Well, what happened was he got so strong that if he did decide to play football with these humans, he would probably break through them. His name is Demolition Man. Nobody would expect this guy to be an Avenger because he wasn't even the best football player. That's like what Peter Parker says. He's like, I couldn't do stuff then, so I can't do stuff now. You know? He joined the Avengers in Captain America issue 349. He helped Battlestar and US Agent free Captain America, and when US Agent and Flag Smasher started to get a little distracted, D-Man himself finished the mission properly. Number 5, Lightning. Living Lightning, here we go. It's hard to imagine that a man made of lightning would ever not get the spotlight, but that's what happens when you share the pages with this team. Lightning, aka Miguel Santos, first came into comics as a villain, actually, but he joined the West Coast Avengers in issue 74. Now, his father, cut to way before, his father was part of this group called the Legion of Living Lightning, or LOL, as some would say. And when they tried to gain control of the Hulk, which is a terrible idea, his father was killed in action. Again, terrible idea, don't fight the Hulk. So Miguel wanted to learn more of his father in the Legion, so he broke into the Legion's headquarters, and while he was snooping around, one of the machines turned on, and he turned into a living energy. Now, he almost joined the Great Lakes Avengers at one point, but only because he thought GLA meant Gay Lesbian Alliance. I don't think Great Lakes are as exciting, but you never know. We have one over here, it's Lake Ontario. It's way too cold and smelly. No. I would much rather Gay Lesbian Alliances. The team had the worst luck when it came to recruits, let's just say that. Number 4, Stingray. Walter Newell made his comic book debut in Tales to Astonish issue 95. Now his life began as an oceanographer and an engineer, and once he created a suit built for deep sea exploration, a cool nickname was bound to come afterwards. Stingray, there it is, that's a cool nickname. He was ordered to bring in Namor to investigate the disappearance of water from our oceans. He ended up working with Namor numerous times, Water Bros for life, and then he joined the team as a reserve member in the Avengers issue 319. Funny enough, in the Armor Wars storyline, Iron Man wanted to recover all these suits that had Stark tech in it. So he comes in, knocks out Stingray, and then after attaching the Negator pack, nothing happened. So the suit was indeed not stolen. You know, it's always nice when you knock someone out for no reason. I'd love to see him make an appearance in the Armor Wars Disney show, but I think we need a lot of other stuff first before we even look at Stingray. Although he is cool. Number 3, Jack of Hearts. Jonathan Hart, son of Philip Hart, a brilliant scientist who developed a liquid called Zero Fluid, and his mother was actually part of the Contraxian race. Now, the alien woman was also a scientist sent to discover this energy source to help their dying Contraxian son. Now, the alien lady heard about Philip Hart's experiments, so they met, got married, and then out came Jack. And then later on, when Jack was a teenager, his father had completed the Zero Fluid, but was sadly killed by the agents of a criminal corporation who wanted the fluid for themselves to market it. Classic bad guy stuff. Give us your fluids, let's fight. So when Jack hid in his father's lab, he was covered in said Zero Fluid, and then he started to glow and change and become more powerful, becoming the Jack of Hearts. Energy was just oozing out of his body. He handled his father's killers easily after that. He then joined the Avengers in Volume 3, Issue 43. Number 2, not one, but 2 guns. He's got 2 guns, the 2-gun kid. Let's talk about him. Of course, we can't forget this rootin' tootin' Avenger. Look out, gang, here he comes. Matt Hawk joined the team in Avengers 142. This guy's fun. Now, the cover alone, let's talk about this. The Avengers versus the wild Western heroes of all. Let's go. I'm gonna read this right now. He was a Harvard-educated Boston lawyer who settled in 1870s Tombstone, Texas, after the Civil War. Like the Civil War, not Civil War, like the Civil War. You get it? I don't really have to pitch what his life was pre-Avengers. I mean, there's horses, there's shooting, there's lots of nice boots. One day he saved the life of this elderly man. He was getting picked on by a rootin' tootin' gang. But this man just happened to be legendary gunslinger Ben Dancer. It's Ben Dancer. So Ben is exactly what you'd imagine in your head. I read all of his lines in Sam Elliott's voice because, well, of course I did. Look at him. So he, of course, trained Matt, and then when the Avengers fought Kang back in that era, so once the dust had settled, literally, the dust had settled, the 2-gun kid came back to the modern era with the team. And Hawkeye had a pretty good time as well. This is when he started to dig the West Coast life. He wanted to leave the Avengers because being a bow and arrow man, made more sense to be out there than Manhattan. I have to agree. And finally, number 1, we can't forget about him, the Forgotten One. Gilgamesh made his first appearance in Eternals issue 13. He was born before the Ice Age, and in 3000 BC, the Eternal became Gilgamesh, king of Uruk in Sumeria. In ancient times, he would wander the earth battling tyrants and taking down beasts. He would fight alongside Hercules, and he even took down the demon dragon Zeus. He fought for the Roman Empire as a centurion, just taking out tribes left and right, and then he joined the Avengers in issue 300. And currently, he works alongside Hercules and the gods of war. Now, I feel like we're gonna see this guy soon in the MCU. I mean, the Eternals movie, Thor, Love and Thunder, bringing in some gods. The Forgotten One, no more, I have a feeling.
Number 10, Silverclaw. Maria Santiago, aka Silverclaw, was born near the village of Kamakiri in South America, and this village was filled with simple folk whose ancestors worshipped the ancient gods until the arrival of the Spaniards. Her father was a native of the village who was constantly ridiculed for his beliefs, and his daughter was no different as she was ridiculed for, well, different reasons. You've heard of werewolves, right? Well, Maria had the interesting ability to transform into a variety of were forms, including jaguar, anaconda, cockatoo, monkey, sloth, and cheetah. And they were unfortunately uncontrollable for a while, which was not too great to say the least because it scared a lot of people. Now fast forward a bit and we see Silverclaw join the Avengers during the Civil War arc. And in this arc she fought Captain Marvel, who was attempting to get her to sign the Superhuman Registration Act. Silverclaw was pretty against the SHRA as it was not the law in her country and she was not a US citizen. Now as a result, a pitched battle between the two occurred with Silverclaw able to just so close evade arrest. After Captain America's assassination, she did voluntarily surrender and was registered as a US citizen. Now why is she so useless? Well, because she's not only just a bit lame of a character, but she didn't really do anything of worth that landed her a permanent position on the Avengers team. Now I do like her power though, I can't lie.
Number 9, Swordsman. Okay, so I'll give you that Swordsman was at least talented in his art form, but at the end of the day, he's just a guy with good sword skills. You might be thinking, who are you going to rag on next, Amanda? Clint Barton? You also might be thinking, Amanda, wow, did you just use the term rag? Are you from like the 1930s? I'm not, though I should be maybe. And no, I'm not going to insult Hawkeye by putting him on this list. While there are many other Avengers who are just humans with superpower-like skill sets, Clint at least is also a super interesting character. Swordsman, however, remains quite dated, relegated to being a hero of the past. He might have been good with the sword, but that also wasn't enough to have him save himself and also save his true love Mantis at the same time. Tisk tisk. And sure, Swordsman may have returned as a cooler Katati version of himself, but let's not forget that this is technically a different character. As while his Katati version has all of Swordsman Jacques Duquesne's memories, he is still an entity separate from Swordsman and made more interesting by the fact that he is part of the alien Katati race, let's be honest.
Number 8, Star Fox. Now originally named Eron and rechristened Eros at the age of 5, Star Fox is the son of 2 Eternals who has a pretty interesting power to say the least. Now what's that power, you ask? Well, he has the ability to manipulate the pleasure centers of the brain of any people within 25 feet of himself. This power emanates from him at all times and causes people to feel, well, good. And by concentrating just a little bit more, he can provoke extremely pleasurable sensations and make a person highly aroused, euphoric, or totally sedated depending on what the situation calls for. Eros has spent most of his life fighting his power-hungry brother Thanos, and that's right, that Thanos. And honestly, you'd think that being related to one of the biggest and strongest bad guys in all of Marvel history would make you a pretty useful ally, but sadly you'd be wrong. The Avengers admitted him to their training program and gave him the name Star Fox since they felt Eros was a little inappropriate for a code name. And he served the Avengers faithfully for several months, helping them vanquish enemies like the Wizard, Terminus, and Maelstrom. That being said though, when he first joined the Avengers, he intentionally failed to mention his ability. Needless to say, when they found out, he didn't last.
Number 7, Squirrel Girl. On to something a little bit more bright, let's go on to Doreen Green. She made her comic book debut in Marvel Superheroes Volume 2, Issue 8, back in the early 90s. She was born with these fantastic squirrel-like abilities, tail included. She learned she could communicate with squirrels at just age 10. Now this sounds like a fairy tale so far, but don't let the tail fool you. She packs an incredible punch. For example, in an early comic, she took on Dr. Doom. In Marvel Superheroes Issue 8, she bumps into Stark, gives him a run for his money in order to prove how powerful she is, and then she shows Tony her power. She jumps, she hops, she climbs all around. It's pretty impressive. Squirrels start coming in from everywhere, and then all of a sudden they're commanded to jump onto Tony. And then Dr. Doom came and interrupted the whole thing. He jammed Stark's electronics, and in order to save Tony, she sent that horde of squirrels onto the Doom ship. It was amazing. And then voila, Stark is free thanks to the insane squirrel posse, Then the squirrels get down to Doom, and then he leaves. He taps out. He's like, I don't want anything to do with this. This is way too much for me. Guy straight up ran away. Doreen later joined the US Avengers on their 2017 run. Number 6, Sandman. Believe it or not, Sandman was once an Avenger. William Baker made his comic book debut in 1963 with The Amazing Spider-Man issue 4. And yeah, sure, most of the time the Sandman is considered a villain, but that's why we have to mention this small change of heart, because even bad guys, it's possible to change. It happens. He bumped into the Thing, a similar looking guy, you know, being big and beige and big and all. So they had a little chat about life and how to use your abilities maybe for the greater good. So we started to help Spider-Man a bit here and there, and then in Avengers issue 329, Captain America announced a new Avengers team, and on that roster was Sandman. He was one of the 7 reserve members. He of course didn't last long because, well, he was a reserve member for one, and coming from the villain side already, I'm sure he wasn't too committed. How great would that have been if the good guys had a sand dude? Wouldn't that be great? We could use the sand guy. Number 5, triathlon / 3D man. Okay, 3D man / triathlon, aka Delroy Garrett Jr. He joined the team in Avengers Volume 3, issue 27. He showed up and just whooped everybody's ass. It was great. The team basically had to hire him on the spot. They had no choice. But before this, he grew up running, hence his name Triathlon. He competed in the Olympic Games and he was crushing it. That was until he tested positive for steroids. Then he got his 3 medals taken away from him. So he turned to religion, to the triune understanding, and the group's founder, Jonathan Tremont, had found a fragment of a mysterious object and used it to give Garrett the powers of 3D man, the 3D man himself. Look out. I would see a 3D man movie in 3D. God, what a ride that would be. You just don't put on the glasses and you don't see half the movie. You're like, oh, I get it. It's cool. It's cool. Number 4, US agent. Okay, spoilers coming in hot for Falcon and the Winter Soldier. If you haven't watched it yet, pause this video, watch the entire series, and then come back and click play. It's easy. John Walker is known for being the hothead that replaces Captain America in the show and in the comics. He went as far as injecting super soldier serum into his own body, but he didn't become Steve Rogers. Instead, he killed a guy with the Captain America shield. It's kind of brutal. And by the time the show ends, the shield is back in the hands of Captain America, Sam Wilson, and Walker becomes US agent officially. The suit's black, so it's, you know, official and all. And in the comics, he eventually joined the ranks of the West Coast Avengers, and it feels like this is where the Avengers are going in the MCU currently. Because in the comics, when Hawkeye moved to the West Coast and set up an Avengers team there, the government wanted to put somebody official, kind of out of the superhero loop, in there just to make sure things are going smoothly. Now at this time, the Vision was also a bit of a problem, so that move made sense. So they sent in US agent. Now with Vision being white in the MCU, I feel like they're kind of heading there. This is getting good. It's getting tricky. Number 3, Hawkeye. I have to mention Hawkeye because he's one of the 1960s Avenger recruits, and he's one of the big 6 in the MCU, and I feel like he doesn't get enough credit on screen still. Like in the comics, he becomes Goliath. It's epic. When the West Coast Avengers were assembled, Hawkeye was the leader of the team, like I said. But for a little bit, that was until they thought the US agent would be a better replacement for leadership. So he ended up coming in and then taking over as the new leader. So things get a little wonky. So Hawkeye thought, no sweat. I'll get some Pym particles and we'll see who the biggest guy is after all. And then he became this. Number 2, the Sentry. He made his first appearance in Sentry issue 1. Meet Robert Reynolds. He was a struggling addict who made his way into a laboratory and discovered something called the Golden Sentry Serum. So he consumed it, and then he got the surprise of a lifetime when he was given the power of 1,000,000 exploding suns. So back in 1947, Project Sentry was put together by the remnants of the US Operation Rebirth and Canada's Department K. They joined forces and they wanted to recreate the super soldier serum, but they magnified its effects 100,000 times. That plus a cool outfit in the mix, and now we have a new superhero. So after this, Robert fought alongside the X-Men, the Fantastic Four, and of course, the New Avengers. He's a really powerful guy. He once became a Horseman of Apocalypse. He was the Horseman Death. And then he ended up going crazy because he thought he was the heir of Apocalypse. It was a whole thing. It was crazy. And finally, number 1, Hercules. Of course, we can't forget the son of Zeus. Come on, the king of the Olympian gods, another 60s recruit, Hercules. He made his first Silver Age appearance in Journey into Mystery Annual issue 1 in 1965, and in Avengers issue 45, he and the rest of the team went against the Super Adaptoid. And right after the dust had settled, Hercules was standing with the team, expressing how bright the sun doth shines. Somebody even put his name on a sign. That's how you know it's official. As soon as a 19-year-old starts painting your name on it like a Katy Perry concert, bam, you made it. So with Russell Crowe reportedly cast as Zeus in the next Thor installment, we may be closer to Hercules than we think.
Number 10, Steel Corpse from Age of X. Iron Man is now a household name thanks largely to the MCU. and the Iron Man film in 2008 that started it off. Believe it or not, before that he was not that well known in the mainstream. Don't let them rewrite history for you. Comic historians like to do that a lot. So does the media, especially right now. Still, within comics pre-MCU, Iron Man was decently utilized, but it definitely jumped up after that popularity. A lot of that was thanks to horizontal marketing. Anyway, on to Age of X, which came out in 2011. Here you had an intriguing version of Tony Stark who went by the name of Steel Corpse. Why? Because he had ended up becoming permanently bonded to his Iron Man costume, which was also slowly digesting him. Metal indeed. Seeing the irony in becoming a walking corpse, that's how he decided upon his name. Also, his armor could operate without him, like it had its own directives and would just drag him along for the ride. Tony has a bad history with that happening with his armors. His AI is just too good. He's making them too good. Number 9, clue. You ever have words you just can't say? No matter how many times you hear it, people will say it right to you, and 2 seconds later, it's gone, like dust in the wind. This is one of those for me. Same with Kara and Kara. This is a sad Hulk. An alter ego of the Hulk, not Bruce Banner. This character is described as the Hulk of Hulks. Cause paradoxically, sometimes nothing makes you madder than feeling sad. It is said that this is the Hulk's repressed rage that even he has to always keep in check and inside because he knows that it'll be very dangerous. However, during the Axis storyline event, this alter ego broke free. And because Axis was all about heroes having the alternate moralities, well, this character went on a rampage and was more dangerous than the Hulk ever had been. So you know that means they racked up quite the body count because the Hulk has killed hundreds. I don't care what Marvel says. We've seen the towns destroyed. This character has a more streamlined, doomsday-esque design. It's pretty cool. Number 8, Hawkeye from Old Man Logan. Why hello again, Old Man Logan. We meet again. Not for the last time, I'm sure. Hawkeye is a main character for a decent portion of this story. He fulfills the role of cool side character. This Hawkeye is blind but still able to see in a way that is reminiscent of the Daredevil. He also has a ponytail, and you know you feel cool if you're rocking a ponytail. Hawkeye managed to survive all those years in that supervillain controlled America. That is until he teamed up with Wolverine, aka Logan. Don't do it, it's a bad life choice. If you want a cool archery style road trip companion, then Old Man Hawkeye is for you.
Number 7, Two Gun Kid. Another human, Two Gun Kid is a Western style hero. Sure, Westerns are cool, but Two Gun Kid is basically just a cowboy. Take away his guns and his horse lightning and there ain't much there to work with. We aren't talking about the original Two Gun Kid either. The original Two Gun Kid was Clay Harder, who first appeared in 1948 in Two Gun Kid issue number 1. This version of Two Gun Kid, Matt Hawk, would not appear until 1962 in issue 60 of the series. He doesn't have superpowers and he's literally from the 1870s, so he wouldn't be a very knowledgeable hero in the modern day. In fact, when he came to the modern day, he had Hawkeye show him around, became an honorary member of the Avengers, but then decided he missed his own time period, so returned home. Peace.
Number 6, Demolition Man. Born and raised in Detroit, Dennis Dunphy idolized superheroes ever since a young age. After not getting drafted onto any professional football teams, which was kind of his dream as an adult, he was approached by an agent of the Power Broker and offered the chance to undergo a process to increase his physical strength to superhuman levels, hoping that this would increase his chances of becoming a professional football player. Obviously, he agreed and had his strength boosted, but with his newfound power, he actually couldn't safely compete against any other regular athletes. Not too long after, Captain America took an interest in Power Broker Inc. because of one of its clients, the Super Patriot, and then soon after, Dunphy allied himself with Rogers, created a costume based on Daredevil and Wolverines, and captured Carl Malice, the head scientist. This unfortunately resulted in Dunphy's own capture though, and he was subjected to more tests, which resulted in a bit of a heart attack. Captain America thankfully saved him and nursed him back to health, and for a time, Dunphy acted as Steve's telephone hotline operator. When Cap reformed the Avengers, he gave D-Man a call, though one can't shake the feeling it was mostly out of sympathy. D-Man was quickly forgotten and lived a sad life as a homeless person before resorting to villainy. Dennis is a very nice guy, and hopefully he gets help, but he's really just not Avengers material. Should've stuck to being Steve's secretary, man.
Number 5, Doombot. This is what happens when you let Hank Pym run the Avengers. In the series Avengers AI, Hank leads his own Avengers team. Who does he decide to put on it? Let's see. Doombot. Let's also acknowledge that this only happened because after one of the many battles against and defeats of Ultron, Hank decided keeping artificial intelligence as prisoners was bad, but he had no qualms with reprogramming them, which also seems morally ambiguous in my opinion. He also had no problem with putting tiny black holes inside them, which also seems very irresponsible. True facts. Hank reprogrammed the Doombot to be loyal to him and made him a member of his artificially intelligent Avengers team, whose roster also included Victor Mancha and Protector. Yeah. Pym probably just shouldn't get to lead Avengers teams in my opinion. Certainly not AI ones either. He also created Ultron, so. Doombot wasn't completely useless as he was still a Doombot, but wasn't useful enough to be remembered. Sad face. After the AI Avengers disbanded, the rest of the Avengers lost track of him, or didn't care to keep up, and we didn't really see him again until he reappeared to help his teammate Victor Mancha find a new body in the 2017 Runaway series. Also, you should read that because it's really good.
Number 4, Triathlon. Delroy Garrett Jr. is a pretty exceptional human, I won't lie. I mean, he wound up making it into the Olympic Games and won a total of 3 gold medals, so obviously he's got some talent, right? Well, I hate to break it to you, but not really, as he tested positive for steroids and was basically banned from sports for life after that. Turning to religion, Garrett ended up joining a cult that bestowed him with the powers of 3D Man, which basically meant that he gained various superhuman physical attributes that are approximately 3 times greater than that of even the finest human athlete. Pretty much he gained the powers he got from steroids without the steroids. Captain America eventually recruited Triathlon for the Secret Avengers, a team that worked against the Superhuman Registration Act, but Triathlon kept pushing for the main Avengers to be just a little bit more diverse, and that landed him on a spot on the main team for a while. Now in all honesty, that's all he did for the Avengers, make them just that tiny bit more diverse, so kudos to him for that, but maybe try being a better hero next time.
Number 3, Jocasta. Jocasta could have been super cool, but she was kind of relegated to just being Ultron's tattletale and almost loyal mate. She was built by Ultron to be his mate and bride in a sense, sort of like the story of Frankenstein's bride. At first he had tried to transfer the mind of Janet Van Dyne into Jocasta. This actually succeeded, but just made Janet in Jocasta's robotic body seek to tell the Avengers what was going on, and they put a stop to Ultron's madness, reversing the procedure. Jocasta would return a few more times in the comics, but never make much of an impression. She actually could have been a really cool character, but it always feels like she's never really given much of a chance to shine. Still often being resorted to plots where Ultron wants to merge her with Janet, even in the modern day. She was granted Avengers status when she decided to sacrifice herself in order to destroy the Evolutionaries' base before she died in the process. And Avengers Annual Issue 17 out of 1988.
Number 2, Stingray. Dr. Walter Newell was a brilliant oceanographer and engineer who supervised the construction of a domed undersea city with plans to grow food for mankind. The city was attacked by the Plunderer, but he was stopped by the Atlanteans Namor, the Submariner, and Lady Dorma, but unfortunately the city was destroyed. Now in response to this, he designed a suit specifically for the deep sea exploration that he named Stingray, as much of the design was based on manta rays. The suit can safely operate in depths of up to 1,200 feet, has a unique oxygen diffusion system based on fish gills, grants Newell superhuman strength and durability to handle underwater conditions, and is able to swim at high speeds underwater. Now Newell can also glide when not in the water, which is a pretty sweet add-on if I do say so myself. Also should probably mention that the main weapon of the suit is a potent electrical blast, so the name Stingray is definitely fitting. In all honesty, the only reason Stingray was ever an Avenger was because the team needed to use his Hydro base as a launch site when the US government placed airspace restrictions preventing the Avengers from launching Quinjets to downtown Manhattan. Other than that, he really didn't offer much else for the team. Sorry, man.
Number 1, Dr. Druid. Dr. Druid was Anthony Ludgate, originally a student of psychology and psychiatry who was very much interested in the ancient powers of druids and those of the occult. He wasn't such a bad hero to begin with, but quickly became overshadowed by greater mystic heroes such as Doctor Strange. He also studied under the Ancient One, and after some successful heroic pursuits was made an Avenger. However, he became bewitched by Ravonna Renslayer and did some pretty awful things, like manipulating the Avengers into making him chairman, usurping Captain Marvel aka Monica Rambeau, who held the title previously. Following this, he got lost in the time stream, and when he returned, used his hypnotism to swindle someone out of their property so he could rent it out to make money and spend his days drinking. Since then, he has died, returned, and become more of a villainous character in the comics, with his Avengers membership being revoked. Which makes sense.
Number 10. Justice. Also known as Vance Astrovic, he has latent mutant telekinesis powers that were activated when he encountered his future self, Major Victory of the Guardians of the Galaxy. The Major also traveled back in time and across realities to prevent himself from ever acquiring powers, but instead just activated them early and created an alternate timeline. Man, talk about being your own worst enemy. He accidentally killed his father and went to prison, and during this time, learned to respect the law, even helping the guards during an uprising. When he was released, he had a new outlook on life and named himself Justice, becoming a hero. He has been a member of the New Warriors and later the Avengers, discovering a new way to defeat Ultron and helping them defeat him. His main power is his telekinesis, although he was once a fighter in the UCWF, Unlimited Class Wrestling Federation, where he was known as Manglin' John Mahoney. Hey guys, if you like these videos and you want to see more, be sure to take a second and hit that like button. Number 9. Black Knight. Dane Whitman is actually the third character to bear the Black Knight name, and he first appeared in The Avengers number 47 in 1967. Nephew to the original Black Knight, he inherited a mystical sword that carried a curse and fought to restore honor to the Black Knight name. He uses a winged horse named Aragorn as his mount, and as an Avenger, helped the team take on Kang the Conqueror. An excellent swordsman with magic senses, he has been a member of many other teams, including the Heroes for Hire and the Ultra Force. He had a 4-issue miniseries in 1990 and was the main character of his own series that was cancelled after a short time. If Black Knight is an Avenger that you have heard of, then good news for you, he'll be appearing in the upcoming Marvel film Eternals in 2021, played by Kit Harington. If you've seen Game of Thrones, then I'm sure you'll agree he's a great choice. Can't wait to see Jon Snow in the MCU. Number 8. Two-Gun Kid. In 1948, Marvel released their first ever Western comic book, Two-Gun Kid. An expert gunslinger wrongly accused of murder, he spends his life on the run, but does good everywhere he goes. Just him, his 2 6 guns, and his trusty guitar. Marvel had great success with this and went on to create a whole slew of Western-themed comics, but I'll bet the kid never thought he would one day be riding alongside men in tights as a member of the Avengers. The kid met the Avengers when they went up against the time-traveling villain Kang in 1870 and got along really well with Hawkeye, so he just joins up and helps them take on Kang. Afterwards, he returns to the 20th century with the Avengers. In the modern era, he works alongside She-Hulk, hoping to become her colleague since she works at a law firm, but quickly realizes he'll never be able to catch up on all the new laws and instead becomes a bounty hunter. He rides around in an awesome jet cycle named Lightning, which he uses to fly around the city.
Number 7. Natasha Stark. Let's go over a blip of an alternate universe. One that is more cool if you are a Stony shipper than anything else. Stony being the pairing of Steve Rogers and Tony Stark. Let me explain. I know some of you are already clicking off, but it's fine because all parts of fandom are valid. This universe is a sweet nod to the boon and transformative fandom that happened after the Civil War comic arc of 2006. This arc dealt with the pro versus anti-registration sides of superheroing. This was after a disastrous superheroing event goes wrong featuring the New Warriors, which leaves many dead, including 60 children. This arc would decimate Tony and Steve's friendship, and before this they had been besties, and so some fans felt that it hadn't been the best executed and they weren't that happy with it. And so these fans took to fandom and fan fiction to create what are called fix-its. They wanted to make the universe like it was again. Friends. But for many, this ended up ballooning into a ship, and it became one of the dominant pairings of the fandom until the MCU, and till the end of the line, until not. Nah. With all that established, let's talk about Natasha Stark from Earth 3490. This is a female Tony who averts civil war by marrying Steve. Oh yes, because their feelings tended that way already, and the only difference was that Tony was a woman in this universe. Okay, sure Jan, I see you. Again, this was a blip, but for many shippers a ha, I knew it moment. Whenever a part of your fandom is acknowledged in a fun way, it's always a good day. Fandom positivity is pretty cool. Number 6, Dargo Couture. Do you like Conan? Do you like Kamandi? Well then get ready for the Thor of Earth 10280. He is the last champion of Midgard, and he is living the most metal life, fighting Loki, who in this universe is a techno-sorcerer, which, I mean, how cool does that sound? Now he was a character who became Thor by wielding the hammer, which has happened multiple times throughout Thor's history. People become new Thors. Not that I would call myself that if my name was Dargo Couture. Is that a Farscape nod? Probably not, but I like to pretend it is because I make my own fun and connections. This costume is great. The spikes and somehow the extension of the wings on the helmet make them cool. He looks like he's heading a heavy metal band. Number 5, Super Soldier. When it comes to amalgam universes and characters, you've got choices, but we're gonna go with the original, the classic that fused characters from DC and Marvel together, and the imprint was actually called Amalgam Comics. They made a little one for a year to publish these. This happened after a series of lead-up versus fights. The characters would find themselves smooshed together. One of these fusions was Super Soldier, the combination of Superman and Captain America. The name's a bit on the nose, but what's he gonna do? This character debuted in 1996. Again, as I said in my Batman crossovers vid, the 90s loved a good crossover. So here in this universe, the Super Soldier serum was derived from DNA taken from a dead alien, because why not? What else are you gonna do with a dead alien? They gave this formula along with solar radiation to a young Clark Kent, who then developed abilities because of it and became a super soldier. So there's not much Steve Rogers in the name, but there's some in the backstory. Not all fusions are seamless. It's an odd world when you fuse better years later with Doctor Strange. But this fusion is iconic, and it's a symbol of more cordial times between the American Big Two. Number 4, Mainframe from the MC2. The MC2 is a fondly remembered alternate universe wherein the boom of superheroes happened 15 years before it actually did in the Marvel 616 universe. So kind of like creating a golden age for Marvel so that they could have legacy characters, because that's what this comic focused on, the next generation of characters, something that DC already specialized in at that time. You see how companies feel about legacy characters is always changing and shifting. Sometimes they're great and sometimes they're awful. Mainframe is the MC2 version of Vision. He is an android patterned off the brain patterns of Memory Stark. So he has the backstory of Ultron and Age of Avengers. Mainframe is able to manifest in Iron Man's armor and hop from suit to suit, and also to satellite. He tried to make himself the de facto leader of the Avengers right out the gate. The Avengers at first were not aware that he was an AI, but when they found out, they actually still remained his friend and helped him out with all the stuff that he needed, because being nice to AIs means that they don't go crazy and take over the world. Life lesson. Number 3, Capwolf. Yes, I'm serious, Capwolf. Capwolf is a bit of a joke. In fact, the arc that he first debuts in is meant to be a slight tongue-in-cheek reference parody of an other story arc that was going on, but that fell flat, not only for modern readers, but for readers at the time. In fact, it had to be explained, and that's never a good sign. Capwolf is what it sounds like. Captain America as a werewolf. And as silly as it is, it's also awesome. And it would be reused years later whenever they need to do like a creature feature. We need Frankencastle, we need Capwolf, we need somebody to be a vampire, we got choices. Something about a wolf parading around in Cap's costume with his shield is just, it's fun. It's a fun time. Especially if you just want to go with it. So if you like just going with it, this alternate version may be for you. Number 2, Weapon Hex. Here we meet another fusion character, this one from Warp World, which we've talked about many times on this channel, but if you're new here, here are the cliff notes. Gamora, wielding the Infinity Gauntlet, took the souls from the Marvel Universe, put them inside the Soul Gem, and then folded it in half so that all of those souls were then fused together. This created a fusion of X-23, Laura Kinney, and the Scarlet Witch, Wanda Maximoff. Here we're looking at a baby being born through experimentation to be the ultimate weapon, but this time instead of it being through science, we're looking at it being through magic and the occult, which of course means there was also some prophecy involved. The result? A really cool fusion, where you've got hex lines all over her body, etc. Think that arc in Teen Titans, the animated series from 2003, where she had like the markings. It's a cool look. And it works surprisingly well as a backstory combo too. See? Magic and science. Thor was right. We found a world where they're one and the same. And number 1, Black Widow from the MCU. We're going to talk about Black Widow for our number 1, but really some would substitute many of the other characters in the MCU for this spot. The Marvel Cinematic Universe has become so large at this point that it just has its own fans and its own continuity that can operate, and for some does operate, entirely independently of comic canon, which is both a good and a bad thing, just like all things. For some, it made the characters more accessible and relatable. This is due to many's preference for a purely visual medium, because comics is also partially visual but also textual. There's, you know, layers. Black Widow emerged for some as a fan favorite. This was because they felt she was fully fleshed out, integral, and had many stories to tell. Some felt that she was underused, as was her potential in this universe. For some, the combination of medium and portrayal made her cooler than the original comic book version. As always, mileage varies, and some will prefer the MCU, some will prefer the comics, and some will enjoy both, or not like both. Different strokes.
Number 10, Quasar. Wendell Vaughn was once a run-of-the-mill SHIELD agent who was placed in charge of guarding the quantum bands until one fateful day that changed his life forever. One day, AIM androids were sent to steal the bands, and William Wesley had unfortunately passed away just an hour before, so in order to protect them, Wendell put them on himself, and thanks to his lack of killer instincts, he was able to not only control the power of the bands, but also defeat the AIM androids. Now, if you're not familiar with the power of the quantum bands, let me give you a bit of a rundown. The quantum bands draw quantum energy from the universe, and specifically it taps into the quantum zone. With this, Quasar is capable of controlling all forms of energy. Now, similar to DC's Green Lantern, he can also use energy to create force fields, armor, and weapons, as well as fly, teleport into the quantum zone, and communicate via radio waves. As a longtime fan of the Avengers, Quasar was honored when Captain America personally invited him to join the team, and as a part of the team, he would go on to fight with them in the Kree/Shi'ar war. Unfortunately, Quasar's duties as the protector of the universe would limit his involvement thereafter though. Check him out in his first appearance as Marvel Boy in 1978's Captain America number 217. Number 9. Mockingbird. Born and raised in San Diego, Barbara Bobby Morse was first introduced as a highly trained SHIELD agent and sidekick of Kazar. However, it wasn't until much later in the Marvel team-up series that Morse began using the Mockingbird alias. Now, she doesn't actually possess any superpowers, however, thanks to being injected by a formula, she was bestowed super strength, enhanced agility, and a regenerative healing factor. Couple all that with her extensive training in both hand-to-hand combat and weaponry, and that is a recipe for a valuable member of the Avengers. Now, after eloping with Hawkeye, the two were notified of the formation of the West Coast Avengers, and several Avengers, including Mockingbird herself, left to join the new squad, and her and Hawkeye served as this cute little motivating force for the team. Skip ahead a bit and we see Hawkeye and Mockingbird train the new Great Lakes Avengers, and then during the wake of the Avengers receiving a United Nations charter, both active teams were actually revamped, and Bobby received only one vote to become an active member of the Great Lakes Avengers, and ended up going back to the West Coast Avengers. Obviously, there's a whole lot more to her story, so feel free to check it out for yourself, starting with her first appearance as Mockingbird in 1980's Marvel team-up, number 95. Number 8. Spectrum. Born and raised in New Orleans, Monica Rambeau gained her powers one day while working for the New Orleans Harbor Police when she was exposed and bombarded by extra-dimensional energy. Now classified as an alpha-level threat, she uses her newfound energy form to create energy blasts, alter her appearance, fly, and just a whole lot more. Given the name Captain Marvel by the media, she became friends with many superpowered folks early on, and actually served as an Avenger for a period of time, becoming its leader at one point. However, she was forced to step down from the group after way too many injuries. Out of respect for Genus Vel, the son of the original Captain Marvel, she changed her name to Photon so that he could take up the mantle and carry on his father's legacy. Fast forward a little bit past her time with the Mighty Avengers, we see Monica, now known as Spectrum, join the newly formed Ultimates. However, after the second superhuman civil war, the team was disbanded by the government because of the way they dealt with conflict. They did later reassemble to investigate Eternity at the request of Galactus, and eventually the team was combined into Alpha Flight, and they are working to keep people safe to this very day. Now, if you want to know more about Monica's origin story, check her out in her first appearance in 1982's Amazing Spider-Man Annual, number 16.
Number 7. Hellcat. Real name Patricia Walker. You might recognize her from Marvel's Netflix shows where she's guest starred, but did you know she was also once an Avenger? Hellcat joined up with the Avengers in 1976, but actually had her own teen romantic comedy series before this called Miss America Magazine in 1944. Similar to Two Gun Kid, this is a popular character that sort of slowly evolved into a superhero. She appears again in 1977 in The Defenders, where she meets the son of Satan, and the two later become married, a husband and wife occult investigation team. She is a well-trained martial artist and gymnast, with wrist-mounted claws and grappling hooks. Surprisingly, she has appeared in 5 different Marvel video games, including LEGO Avengers. Number 6. Moondragon. Heather Douglas was a young girl driving through the desert with her parents when Thanos' spaceship landed on Earth. Not wanting witnesses, he blew up their car, but Heather was thrown from the vehicle and survived. Her father's corpse is later reanimated to create Drax the Destroyer. Thanos' father, Mentor, found her and took her to his homeworld Titan, where she studied the Titan's ways and unlocked her latent psychic potential. However, she becomes influenced by the Dragon of the Moon, and believing she has successfully resisted its influence, takes on the name Moondragon. She was present when the Avengers confronted Korvac, using her powers to see into his mind while they fought. She later joins the Defenders alongside Valkyrie, and discovers she's still being influenced by the Dragon of the Moon. She manages to resist it for real this time, but as they are separated, she she begins to die from mutated spores, and the dragon appears again, offering to save her life if she agrees to be its host. She does agree, and then, as an evil dragon, fights against the defenders until the 4 of them sacrifice themselves to kill both her and the dragon. Number 5. Tigra. Greer Nelson was a costumed vigilante named Cat, who was enhanced by a doctor who gave her cat-like powers tied to her costume. She is later mutated into Tigra, a human-tiger hybrid created through a mystical ritual. Her feline physiology grants her a number of superhuman capabilities. In addition to the usual super strength and stuff, she has superhuman senses and a regenerative healing factor. Her teeth and claws are razor sharp and capable of cutting through bone, stone, and even some metals. She wears a cat's head amulet as a talisman for her so she can change back and forth between her feline form. She became a part of the Avengers in issue number 211 and proved herself in battle against the Molecule Man. She eventually moves to San Francisco and becomes friends with Spider-Woman. She also helped out at Avengers Academy after the fall of Norman Osborn. Number 4. Falcon. Also known as Samuel Wilson, Falcon grew up in a tough Harlem neighborhood, and his father was killed trying to stop a fight. His mother later died protecting her children from a mugging, and Sam eventually gets involved with the mob at one point, seeming like he would never become a hero. Red Skull uses the Cosmic Cube to give Sam the ability to telepathically speak with birds, especially a falcon that Wilson names Redwing. He is sent to take on Captain America, but Cap frees Wilson from Red Skull's control, and as Falcon, he becomes Cap's partner, and the two work together for a long time. Black Panther also helps out Falcon by helping to create his harness that allows him to fly. He joins the Avengers between issue 184 and 194, but finds out that he's just been drafted to fill a quota, and resentful of being a token, he quits as soon as he can. Number 3. Firebird. First appearing in Incredible Hulk number 265 in 1981, Bonita Juarez was walking across the desert of New Mexico when a huge ball of fire crashed down into the sand just 10 feet from where she stood. Bathed in extraterrestrial radiation, she later discovers she received fire-based superpowers. She believed the fireball was a manifestation of the American Indian legend of the Firebird, and so makes herself a costume and decides to become a hero with the name Firebird. She helped out the West Coast Avengers in a battle against Master Pandemonium, and later was recruited onto the Avengers during a spiritual journey during which she was going by the name La Espirita. She discovers that her powers were actually from an alien child's failed experiment and not an act of God, and after a brief crisis of faith, returns to the name Firebird. Her and the Rangers worked alongside Kane in Scarlet Spider Volume 2, helping him to battle against a monster made of pure energy. Number 2. Stingray. Walter Newell was an oceanographer and engineer supervising the construction of an underwater city. He designed a unique suit for deep sea exploration, basing the design on manta rays and taking up the name Stingray. He was ordered to investigate Namor, but believed him to be innocent and later allows him to escape. In Avengers Volume 3, he was one of the many heroes who responded to the rallying call, but chose not to remain an Avenger full-time. He later becomes a fully active member of the Avengers when Kang the Conqueror begins to strike all around the Earth. He helped to enlist the help of the Atlanteans in the fight on the waterfront, and was a great asset thanks to his nautical experience. He ultimately leaves the Avengers, but remains a reserve member and still responds to emergency calls. Number 1. Demolition Man. Similar to Justice, D-Man was also once a wrestler in the Unlimited Class Wrestling Federation. Born Dennis Dunphy, he was raised in Detroit and idolized superheroes as a boy. A college football player, hoping to one day be drafted, he accepts an offer from the power broker, hoping he'll get the power he needs to become a professional football player. Unfortunately, he winds up too powerful to safely compete with normal athletes, so the power broker sets him up as a wrestler. After Captain America takes an interest in the power broker, Dennis allies with him. Later, he joins the Avengers informally. He designed and built his own costume, based on Wolverine and Daredevil suits, and he nearly dies in a plane crash, joins the US Army, and at one point joins Wonder Man's Revengers, dedicated to dismantling the Avengers. He even becomes bonded with a symbiote at one point, and is later turned into a vampire to save his life after he becomes mortally wounded.